leadership lesson that I realized sometimes people will see something in you that you don't even see in yourself, and you actually have to kind of take hold of that. And like you said, leadership will always find you out. People will if you are called to be in leadership, lead. And, you don't run from it, right? Because if you're called to it and it finds you out, you will actually continue to be placed into it. So you have to embrace it. And so I think from that point on, I just completely embraced leadership.
Welcome to the Marketing for the Culture podcast, powered by the African American Marketing Association. Each week, we'll bring you an insightful conversation from some of the best experts in our industry on how to advance our career. Join the collective of Black marketers across the world, advancing their brand as we work towards creating a collaborative community.
All right, y'all, and welcome to another edition of Marketing for the Culture. I am your host and podcast producer, CL Palmer, aka CZ Pod Gang. It's that time again, and I had to go ahead and do a makeup session because the guy that I'm having on today is none other than Steve Worthy. And Steve, we did this podcast already. This is already happened, but sometimes you gotta look for divine and a little intervention, in the words of my man Lil Wayne. And now that Steve is a speaker at the Marketing for the Culture Summit, the timing couldn't be better.
Agreed.
Welcome officially to the show, Steve.
Well, welcome back. That's what it is, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited, man. I had a blast last time, and I know this one is going to be is going to be the same. So I'm excited to be here, dude.
Man, definitely, man. And just to give everybody a little background, Steve is somebody who I've seen on all the different social media platforms, really bringing it, really killing it on the live streams. And every time I hear, I'm just like, why he not doing some, quiet storm radio? Like he out there with these sultry tones, but he just lighting up the airways with this knowledge. So, everybody got their calling.
Yeah, I did radio a little bit, back in the day.
That's right.
And I love that medium, man. And when we got turned on to podcasting back in 2007, and it just fit. It just fit. I've been loving this thing ever since, man.
Man, you've been in the game for a minute when it comes to podcasting. Like I do not meet a lot of people who predate me when it comes to podcasting, but you are one. And that's something I really want to get into, I guess, when we talk a little bit more Podcasters Live. And of course, you're going to get a whole lot of that when it comes to the Marketing for the Culture Summit. So before we get into that, I want to get everybody to know you, kind of get your story. I guess kind of take us up to Retail Worthy You, because I know that's your baby. You out here coaching people up to be their best self when it comes to retail management. Yeah. And I like the way you deliver some of your messages. I'm not in retail, but the stuff that you're giving is good stuff for any endeavor. It just so happens that your focus and your expertise comes in retail. So, yeah, man. So, yeah, just kind of get us up to speed on all of that.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, retail is my passion. I honestly feel like retail leaders are some of the most underappreciated leaders, if you will. But I think they have the most value to add in business, in marketing, in entrepreneurship, more so than almost any other type of industry, just because of what they have to do. For me, and then retail was one of those things, just like they say, Taco Bell, they say you never go to Taco Bell, you end up at Taco Bell, right? Retail is very similar, right? I went to undergrad for accounting, lasted like 5 months in accounting, hated it. Fell into retail with a small company called Caribou Coffee as a district manager, and it was on from there. Along the journey, I started doing some coaching. I started doing some business development, entrepreneurship, and teaching classes at my church, entrepreneur classes, and it just turned into this idea called. Initially, it was Worthy Business Solutions, helping people with their business concepts. And then it fell into the idea of like, I couldn't stand trying to put business plans together. So I would be more of a coach consultant. I think we talked about that last time.
Yeah.
I fell into being more of a coaching person for them, helping them with their idea and crafting it, helping them with their business model, the value proposition and things like that. And then that just never left me, that passion for coaching and helping people. And I was still doing leadership retail at the same time. And so then Worthy Retail U just kind of came up. It was initially Worthy Leadership Group, but I niched down into really focusing on retail leaders, and I haven't turned back since. I'm enjoying the individual retail leaders that I coach, but what we're moving into now is we're actually moving into this new phase of Worthy Retail U, where we're going to be going into organizations and helping like an entire retail team, a market team, a regional team, all the leaders within there, and actually trying to help them understand about leadership. So we're moving that along into a different phase of Worthy Retail U.
Man, I love that, because you were already looking to just put people in position, and you had to figure out the best way to help. And a lot of people, like myself, have that problem where we try to help people across the board, but we end up trying to just do too much. And I know for me, it was with websites. I make websites, I can edit websites, I can do stuff for myself. But when it comes to clients and people wanting to pay me to do websites, it's like, okay, it's a little bit more than I need. I could just write the content, put your copy together and then have somebody else do that design. So
Right.
Yeah, man, I really get that point right there. But tell me this, like, I guess because you have gone in the leadership direction, did your military background influence that at all?
Oh, massive. I was actually I just had a podcast yesterday on LinkedIn, and I went into my story and where I was the reluctant leader as a young guy, right out of New York, and moved into the Air Force, and my TI training instructor, selected me to be a squad leader. There are 60 people in a squadron. I think 60 to 80 people in the squadron. And so there are 4 squad leaders, and he chose me to be a squad leader. And man, I didn't want to do it at all. I didn't want to be because I was running from the responsibility. I didn't want the responsibility. One of the things I've learned over my career with leadership, you're in leadership for 2 roles. It's for 2 reasons. It's either the reward or the responsibility. But a lot of times they want the reward without the responsibility. I didn't want either. I didn't want either. I don't care about the reward. I don't care about the responsibility. None of that stuff. And but I've always been placed into those roles of leadership. And so I got out of being a squad leader. We get back to the squadron. He pulls me into the office, and he says, "Worthy." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go." So Worthy, you think you got out of this? Think you got out of just because you're not a squad leader anymore? But let me tell you this. So leadership will always find you out. And, as a kid, right, it's like one of those sayings where like your parents say something, you're like, dude, what the hell are you talking? What does that mean?
Right.
And he said, well, you're not squad leader anymore, but now you're what we called back in the day, latrine queen. So now you have responsibility for the cleanliness of our entire bathroom for, 60, 75 dudes at Lackland Air Force Base in the summer, San Antonio, Texas, funky. But my job now is to keep up the cleanliness level of this entire bathroom. And so sometimes you are thrust into a leadership position, and that's exactly what I was. I couldn't, there was no way out. I ran from one, and God put me into another one. And I just said, okay, here it is, what I'm going to do. I've strategized. I figured out what we needed to do. We partitioned off part of the bathroom. I got some of the biggest dudes in my squadron to be on my team so that I could have some muscle. So that way, if somebody was going in the bathroom when they shouldn't, you have to do a 2-lie, right? So so strategy for me developed pretty quickly. We won several accommodations for the cleanliness level. And I thanked them at the end of my graduation, right? Because that was a leadership lesson that I realized sometimes people will see something in you that you don't even see in yourself, and you actually have to kind of take hold of that. And like you said, leadership will always find you out. People will if you are called to be in leadership, lead. And, you don't run from it, right? Because if you're called to it and it finds you out, and you will actually continue to be placed into it. So you have to embrace it. And so I think from that point on, I just completely embraced leadership. I mean, I was raising my hand for everything that had to deal with leadership because I just wanted to learn and grow at that point.
Man, that's fire. Like, sometimes I do look at myself and I'm like, I probably could have went to the military just to pick up a double dose of the discipline and that push.
Yeah.
Because once you're in that room and you stick out, they're gonna move you to where they need you to be. Like, you can't run. It's like, oh, you get all of this too quick, you're going into the next room. And I probably could have used some of that. So yeah, I'm glad to see that some of this stuff is working how it's supposed to out there, man.
It does. It's in the military, right? I think my leadership journey has gone through some iterations because the military, you do stuff just because the person says, and that's the role. That's what we do. But that didn't work for me when I moved out into the real world, right? That whole mindset of like, hey, CO, I need you to do this. Or, well, why? Just because I said so. Like, why are you even questioning me? What are you talking about? What are you questioning me for? And I remember I moved down from New York to Charlotte, North Carolina. And that's when I started working for Caribou Coffee at the time. And I was just being very authoritative in my leadership. And Victor was his name. He was a fellow New Yorker. And he pulled me aside, took me to lunch, and he was like, Steve, that stuff don't work down here. And I was like, what are you talking about? That stuff don't work down here. And, he had been down in the South, for probably about 9 years. And he's like, you got to ask him how the day went. Like, what? What? I was 26 at the time. Why do I care about their day? No, you got to ask them what their day went, or, because, how the church go, or whatever. Man, it took me like 3 weeks to even build up the nerve at our first Monday morning meeting to ask them, was on the call. And I said, hey, before we start, I just want to know how everybody's weekend was. Dude, see how you can hear a pin drop. I mean, you can hear just like, what? What is this dude? What is he? Why? Why does he want to know? Is he going to fire us now? What is he going to do? But that was like one of the biggest, another lesson for me was like, you have to connect, right? You have to connect with your team before you start asking them for certain things. And so that was like one of my second biggest learnings was embracing leadership, but then also understand the next iteration was just not just around the position, but around permission and connecting with people as well.
That's interesting because I listen to a lot of podcasts, of course. And Ricky Williams, former NFL football player, was saying that the discipline and attention to detail that you get in football can't be mirrored outside of life because you expect people to just do things and just fall in line.
Yeah.
And he had to, people in his company, he just had these unreal expectations.
100%.
And so that's an interesting through line because that, there's a lot of comparisons in both, of course, but just the fact that you would have to figure that out, that really speaks to me.
Yeah, man, I say this all the time. Leadership would be easy if it wasn't for the people, right? you can be a leader all day long and do all this other stuff and move in this direction, man. And if everybody just fell in line, then cool, right? But no, these are individuals. These are human beings. They wake up on the wrong side of the bed, right? And you have to be, as a leader, you have to be able to adapt your communication, your ability to connect. One of the things we talk about with Worthy Retail U and the coaching in the coaching standpoint is, helping them moving them from managers to leaders. And that is probably the biggest chasm that we see, is that idea of being a manager, to leadership, where, we tell them all the time, you're managing processes, you're managing protocol, you're managing routines, you lead people. And that, that disconnect of like, I need to be in the trenches with my people, to being a leader where you're up here kind of setting strategy and moving things forward. You can still be in the trenches with people, but your level of communication and how you get things across and how you get things moving forward, and the execution side is absolutely different. Your ability to identify talent in your team. When you're a manager, you are the talent per se, right? And as a leader, you're identifying the talent to actually move the agenda forward. So just trying to help them with that disconnect, or help them move from that manager to a leader, is one of the biggest issues that we've been seeing in retail leadership.
Okay, so since we are talking about Worthy Retail, tell me what is Worthy Retail doing on a day-to-day, and where does the podcast and the live streams fall into that?
Yeah, man. One of the things that we had to do was because I do this when we start talking about podcasters live, and I'll bring it back in the context of, like, I always tell people, I tell people that you have to have pillars. You have to have for your content, right? And those pillars, you have to run your episodes through, right? So ours is communication, culture, and career advancement. So those are from our Worthy Retail U standpoint, and they feed into the Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy live streaming podcast. So everything is hand in glove. There's no deviation for either of them, because those are the core issues. It is communication, culture, and career advancement. And so the podcast in and of itself is just a microcosm of what we do. We take topics and concepts from what we talk to our clients about, and we just put it out there in the podcast form. Been loving to do it, man. It's been amazing. The response has been awesome since we've niched down. I know I'm not a big download person, but man, I got to say the downloads have actually been a super duper increase since we were the Retail Leadership, the Worthy podcast. So right now it is just spiked up. And then the feedback from those episodes have been amazing too. And then the live stream, we put the live stream on hiatus until May, because we were interviewing some really good people, but we weren't interviewing like the right people. We weren't interviewing true retail leaders, right? And so now we got a gang of people, like core retail leaders, regional senior vice presidents, store managers, district managers, right? That we're going to be interviewing and talking about some of the topics from a leadership standpoint. So those two kind of go hand in glove, and they are almost kind of like our proof of concept for Worthy Retail U as well.
Okay, so the live streams, podcasts, they're bringing everything that you've basically done as far as like research to the forefront, so people don't really have to like deep dive to get into it. They could just gobble up all the podcasts, and when they're ready, they could just call Steve and
you want to know about how to ask a great question as a leader, because that's what we talk about, because that's part of communication. Go to my my live stream or my podcast with James Hicks. That's exactly what we talk about. You want to know how to how to get things done, right? You can go to episode with Juanita Taylor, right? And her principles and everything that she talks about are exactly very similar to what we do, right? And so, and so now, they do. They provide you kind of a microcosm of what we do. But then, if you want to get a little deeper with us, of course, just they can hit us up and do a preview call, and we can talk about all that stuff too, and kind of identify where they are. Because here's the thing: the process of being a coach, of what we do, is if you think about the idea of a coach, right, in its truest form, not so much a coach as a person, but as a coach as a vehicle of transportation, because that's really where it came from. right? It's a coach. It takes you from point A to point B. It's a vehicle for transportation. And that's what a coach does, right? Football coach, soccer coach, right? Executive coach. We take a person from where they currently are to where they want to be. And the most critical part is identifying where you are. And that takes time. But once you figure that piece out, it accelerates everything else, because now you have a clearer picture about where you want to go. The tendency is that everybody wants to go here, like at the end, and they haven't done the work up front. And then they wonder why it's taking so long for them to get to the end. Well, honestly, that end may not be your end because you haven't done the soul searching and the understanding and the value creation of who you are. So then that way, once you do that, it accelerates everything to get to this end point. But they got to do that work up front. They got to do that work up front. I'm sorry I went on a little diatribe, man.
No, you good, man. You good, because that's what I wanted people to get. Man, you said something there about coach, and I think, like, how many of these coaches really even know that definition? Because sometimes I feel like when they think coach, all they think is sports.
Yeah.
They're not even thinking about the transportation part of it. They're taking you from one place to another, because sometimes when I look at what they're doing, they're not taking anybody anywhere.
They're not. And the other thing about being a coach, and this is the thing I love about being a coach, is that so if I'm coaching UCL, yo, dude, this is your journey.
Right.
What happens a lot of times is that the coach will almost impose their will on the coachee. And because one, they either want them to get there faster, and if they do that, for me, there's no ownership in the journey. And so for me, I take the time with you. A really good coach will do that. Perry Rue, who's actually my coach, right, will take the time to get me, to get buy-in, or to help me get buy-in for an idea or for a direction that I want to go, right? He can, kind of take me there. But if there's no buy-in for me, then there's no ownership. So it doesn't matter. So stop trying to push people in this direction just because you think that's the right direction. It may not be, because you haven't done your work up front as a coach to understand who they are, to help them understand who they are so they can get to where they need to. But that's the one detriment that I've seen with this idea about people want to be a coach, is that you would try to impose your will on someone else. And that's a recipe for disaster.
Bro, tell me about it. I hate some of the stuff I see on the internet. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah.
Just some of the stuff I just wish we didn't have to deal with on the internet. And just leave it at that. But I do want to talk about Podcasters Live.
Yeah, man.
At first I was thinking Worthy Retail You podcast got you into podcasting, and that's how you got the Podcasters Live. But nah, you been doing this. You like official OG, triple OG status in this podcast game. So man, so kind of get me into your roots and how you got to the point of making Podcasters Live.
Yeah, man. So a buddy of mine, we were working with the same company, because I did this quick stint in project management, and I actually loved it. I reported directly to the CEO, who actually happened to be Black, in Atlanta, PQC International, and I was responsible for developing business clients and companies, and going inside and us helping them using project management principles to help solve their problems. Loved it. At the same time, I had to have Worthy Business Solutions helping people with their business plans. And then I was teaching a class in my church on entrepreneurship. And my buddy, who actually happened to go to the same church, and we worked together, Jerry Barron and I, we just kind of came up with this idea of like how to help husbands who were trying to balance being a husband and also the entrepreneurial lifestyle of what they wanted to try to go and achieve. And so he was at that time 20 years married. I was 7, I think, maybe. I think I was 6 or 7. I'm not sure. But, so we started this, this company. It was called For Husbands by Husbands. completely bit FUBU. So those of you who know FUBU, for us, by us, being in New York, I completely bit that. I don't care.
Hey man, shout out to the shark, man. Damon
Shout out. But it was a business first, and then we started doing Blog Talk Radio, and
man.
yeah, so I'm going back. So we started doing that and interviews, and then we would do our own discussions. Or if he couldn't make it, I'd go in there and do my own. And then our CEO, who happened to be like this tech, like forward thinking guy, like just thank God for him. He was like, dude, have you guys heard about podcasts? And we're like, no, what is that? Man, he hipped us to it. Hipped us to, I sound old. It sound like I mean like this is the 70s. He hipped us to it. My bad. But he told us about, podcasting, talked to us about RSS feed, all that. So we just did our research and all of that stuff. We found a way to take the recording from Blog Talk Radio, and actually started utilizing that, that feed for our RSS feed, and started utilizing that system and promoting it there. And then we just started creating our own recordings as well too. If there was something like on a drive home because Atlanta traffic was horrible, we didn't care about the audio quality. We would just record something in our cars, and next thing you know, and then we put that up. We put that up as a podcast, and so we were just uploading. We got fixated with uploading, putting the content out there, and then over time we got better at it. We developed some interviewing skills, editing skills, and some certain things like that. So we did that from like 2007 to around 2011, 2012. We started, how that go, man. We started making more money professionally. He was like, yo, I'm on a business trip. I can't make it. I'm like, okay, I'm on a trip. I can't make it. And then we were just like, yo, so we can't, we had to dissolve it. But that was that, man. And then started The Worthy Podcast. Horrible name for a podcast. I have a pretty decent last name, but nobody knew what the hell that podcast was. And niched down into retail leadership with Steve Worthy. And then it was International Podcast Day. Well, let me back up for a second. I was part of this podcast support group, International Podcast Support Group. And 4 of us kind of broke off. It wasn't anything negative about the group. We just connected. And this was like early 2000, I want to say, late 2020. And we would just meet regularly via Zoom. I was the only American. Everybody else was over in the UK. And I said, dude, this should be a podcast. Podcasters talking about podcasting. This should be a podcast. And, we just kept meeting. International Podcast Day came about last year, 2011. I jumped on the live stream with Scorpion and Walter.
Shout out.
I'm telling you, man, as soon as I hit the finish button, Podcasters Live was born. Because at that time I had fell in love with live streaming. And I said, dude, I got to do this. I can't wait. I can't wait. It was just something inside of me. Within a week, we had the logo set up. Same person that did my Worthy Retail U logos and all that stuff. She caught the vision. She actually did it for me for free, because she caught the vision. Yeah, man. God's awesome, man. And she gave me 3 different samples, and I picked one and did a little test. Everybody liked the current one that we have. And we did our first major interview. I want to say it was October, the one of the first weeks in October, and then we've been booked up all the way through June now, man. And had some really big hitters from a podcasting standpoint. But the goal for Podcasters Live is to help people build community, right? We feel and we know that the number one problem for a podcaster isn't getting started; it's discoverability. And so one of the best ways we found is to actually build your community so that you can build your overall discoverability. So that way you can actually improve your consumption of your podcast, right? It's not so much that the live streaming is going to supplant your podcast. It is to help people discover your podcast and they consume it on another platform, your podcast on another platform, or If you do it on YouTube, they can put it on YouTube. So the goal is to help them build their community authority through live streaming.
Okay, so let's just jump off in there because you answered one of my questions already. So big ups to you. But since we talk about Walt and live streaming, we had a conversation and we're talking about Walt Gaynor the second. Y'all seen him on this podcast a couple times. I'm not betraying any trust. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this on the podcast. But we were talking about doing the live streams and the way that it forces you to make the content. Because when you are doing the podcast and it's not live, you could just not do it. And I thought about that. I was like, you know what? I have the same feeling. Sometimes I do feel like I need to go live just so I can do the thing. Even if it's not the best version of the thing, I need to just do the thing so it can get out there.
Yeah.
So where do you come in on that philosophy or thought?
Well, see, live streaming for me, I am addicted to it. And here's why. I love the rawness of it. We do have a really good run of show, structure for our guests, and how we build upon each question, which I love. But I also love the idea of going down a rabbit hole, when the guest may say something and kind of going down there and then kind of bringing it back. But I actually enjoy the medium of live streaming, and it does give me, I guess, a little bit of zeal to go and create the content. My only thing is my only thing, and this is, and Walter and I've talked about this, and not disagreement with Walter. The only thing that I've come to disagree with live streaming, and is that how, after the live stream, people will just take the audio from the live stream and just put it up as the podcast. And for me, I get it. I get it. You want to put it out there. You want to put the content out there. But for me, and what we're doing with Podcasters Live is completely different. Completely different. We are taking our live streams, and I'm stripping out my audio. I'm stripping out the audience engagement, and all I have is the actual guest. And what I'm doing is more of a narrative aspect, sort of like an NPR Radio Lab, 20,000 hertz type of interview, type of standpoint, where I can actually go deeper in a concept than I could have if I was on the live stream with somebody. So we're just finishing up James Critland's, and one of the things that he talks about is this idea about what's a podcast. And so I allow him to talk, and I kind of interject, after he says something, and then I allow him to go back, and then I'll have like a follow-up point. So it's more of a narrative style than the actual just, me taking my question from the live stream and then James answering it and making it in a podcast. I'm trying to create a more of an audio experience, because to me, that's what podcast is. It's an audio experience first. And so now, how can I do that? Here's the other thing. What it does create another piece of content. But for me, it just sets us apart, I feel, from just stripping out the live streaming piece and then just putting it up as a podcast. We don't want to do that. We wanted to do something to create something completely, not really different, but uniquely Podcasters Live.
That's interesting. So basically, if somebody wanted that entire sit down, they would need to go to the video and watch it, because what you're doing with the audio is, like you said, you're making an audio experience and diving deep into different type of topics. So I'm probably the way you describe it, it reminds me, like you said, the NPR Freakonomics.
Yes.
Where they're mixing it in, they're dropping in some insight, and they're really, like you said, painting a narrative. So I really got to listen to that. I'm ready for that, because I didn't know that. That is actually news to me, because I just know the stuff that you do on Podcasters Live because it's on my feed every time you drop one. And you're so consistent, it's all the time. So like I'm just thinking like, oh man, yeah, Steve doing it. But like, no, you doing it out shit. So
Oh man, I
big shout out to
appreciate
you
it.
for that. And I hope everybody checks that out because even if you're not a podcaster, just learning about some of the techniques and just making content, it's valuable information. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, man, big shout out to you, man. Um Now, you said a couple things
Mhm.
in there, but I guess I want to focus in on, I guess, like the business
Yeah. Oh yeah.
of live streaming,
Oh yeah, man.
and we're definitely going to be touching on that at the summit. But
Yeah, man.
I guess, can you explain where live stream stops becoming an activity and becomes a business?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, just like when we talk about when you start a podcast about your why, I think it's the same thing, for your podcast. Excuse me, for your live stream. Some people start out with it just being like, "Hey, this is cool. I want to do this. I just want to share my content." And some people still treat it as such, until they actually either create a product or have a business or something that's attached to it. That way, because the content in and of itself, right, is great, but you're competing with so many other people out there from a content standpoint. I
Mm,
feel, this is my personal opinion. It's a well, this isn't my personal opinion. This is fact. The live streaming business is a $70 billion business, right?
mm,
And so when I think you have a business kind of attached to it or a concept or something else attached to your live streaming, then that's when it truly kind of becomes a business. That's when you start to take, your audio, right, and your video and your lighting, and you start to take all these things into consideration. We have a client right now, former NBA player, and right now he has a really super popular show on Facebook. Great show. Audio, not so much. Video, not so much. Um, Background, not so much. Run a show, not so much. Right? All these things that he's identified that, and that's where we're working with him. But we've been able to really provide him a good structure because his end game and what he wants to do is he's turning this to a business. He wants to show other young people how to become a broadcaster. I said, well, you have to have a look of a broadcaster. And so, when you start to think about your why for your business, then you start to take different steps to actually monetize. Just like podcasting, right? For
mm.
some people, podcasting is just a hobby. And, but when they start to, take it seriously, they start to make a different investment. But I think
Yeah.
the live stream piece in and of itself, and here's the thing like I said before, I really love about it, about the community piece of it, is because they get to see you raw. Like, and people want to see that. Some people are waiting for a train wreck, right? But for the most part, people want to see you succeed when you're on the live stream. And here's why: because they wish they could be doing it.
Mm.
Period. Podcasting. That's why you're an instant authority or thought leader when you start a podcast on a certain topic, because a lot of people wish they could be doing it, and they're not. I'm not saying it's no knock on anybody. I'm just saying that's just the truth. And so you don't take that for granted when you start the live stream. You start to realize that, man, there's a lot of other people who wish they could be doing this. And so how do I actually make the most of this? And actually, just like we talk a lot about podcasting as a craft, which is why we're doing Podcasters Live that way, because we want our podcast to be crafted and not just something that's just actually placed out there, because we respect the craft. And I think with live streaming, I respect the live streaming craft. And so making sure people look good, making sure people have a good run of show, making sure people, if you are getting sponsored, how does that play within your run of show? How does that play within your background? How does that play when you actually position yourself, the guests that you have on your show? Don't just have anybody on your show. If they're not fitting within your brand or your concept or your pillars, then why have them on the show? So there's a lot of different variables that kind of go into play, but I think it falls back to why do you want to live stream, and what, and then why, if you want a podcast, but why do you want to live stream? Because that will dictate all of your decisions kind of going forward.
That was very insightful, Steve.
Thanks, man.
I want y'all to make sure y'all come out to the Marketing for the Culture Summit so you can hear Steve drop more bombs like this. Like, you got to know your why. Like, it's the most simple thing, but just the way you put it, it's a good reminder. Like, if you really trying to get into the game and you want to do something, whatever it is you're trying to do, it's like, you know why you doing it. Like, it's
the worst thing, and we hear this all the time, and this is great timing. I'll use it from a podcasting standpoint, even from a live stream standpoint, right? People just jump on there and they're there with their boy or their gals and just want to chop it up, and that's cool, awesome, but don't get pissed when nobody's watching, or don't get pissed when nobody's downloading your stuff, right? Because your people will watch it for a period of time until somebody else with something, a more polished show, an actual structure, and create curiosity for them, will stop watching your stuff. My mom, God bless her, if she was alive, she would have probably listened to the first 5 episodes of Retail Leadership just because it was me. And then episode 6, I would have, hey, did you listen to episode 6? Nah, baby, nah, that's not my thing. So right, even your people will give up on you. I won't say give up on you, but they'll stop after a period of time. Right. So don't complain about your stuff, right? And you haven't done the work to actually get it to a certain point where people really want to listen, right? This is an exchange. Live streaming is an exchange of your content for another person's time. Get that, please. Right? And you want to go out here and you want to just live stream for live stream's sake. I get it. I to test the waters, I did the same thing. I tested the waters, and I didn't care if anybody was watching at that point in time. And I honestly still don't care, because I want to get the content out there, because I know the content is going to help somebody, whether it's them live or they catch it on a replay, or somebody's going to share it or whatever. But don't get upset when nobody's out there, because you haven't done the work to get it up to a certain point. And that's exactly what we do with Podcasters Live. We help you get that stuff to a certain point where you can feel good about the product that you want to put out there, because we take this seriously. We take podcasting seriously, just like I take my leadership coaching seriously. And the crazy part about it, CL, is that, it may seem different, but man, that leadership coaching comes into everything I do. From with my clients to, the stuff that I talk about per se, how we conduct our business, all of that leadership coaching stuff all comes into podcasting. The discipline that I learned from the military of trying to craft a message, all of that stuff, all of it kind of comes into play, man. So sorry about the long-winded answer. I don't even know if I answered the question or not.
Hey, man, I mean, it really wasn't a question. I was just saying something.
I went on the chant.
But, podcasters talking about podcasting, that's always going to be a conversation. It'll be never ending. I know I need to come back on Podcasters Live, because I got some things I want to say to the community. I'm gonna get my platform together so everybody will know what I'm talking about. But I want to bring some real talk. Sometimes people don't like to hear some hard truths.
Come on, man.
We might have to just build me in like a 4-minute segment where I just spit some hard truth and then I just get up out of there.
Actually, that's gonna be the name of the podcast Hard Truths. Right?
Oh,
or the truth, or the heart, or I like that. The podcast Hard Truths, or the truth about podcasting, something like, because people need to hear it, and that's the thing. Like, we think that somebody doesn't want to hear those things, and that's, I think the main naysayers. Oh man, why you gotta say it like that? Those are the ones that need to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that need to hear it. you know?
Look, I'm trying to wait though, because my girl still say I don't know how to talk to people. So I'm trying to get that part figured out so I can know how to talk. But I got to keep it real sometimes.
Yeah, man.
But Steve, you have been very gracious with your time, man. Is there anything that excuse me. Let me start over.
No worries.
Steve, you've been very gracious with your time, man. I appreciate every minute, everything you talked about today. Is there anything you want to let the people know about that you got coming up? Let people know where to get in contact with you, and just tell them what they can look forward to at the summit.
Yeah, man. So hopefully, maybe by the time this is out, we will have already launched a new website landing page, asksteveworthy.com.
Hey.
Because what we have found is that, whether I'm on a podcast or I'm speaking somewhere, we talk about Worthy Retail U and we talk about Podcasters Live. And so we wanted to create this one spot where you can find both of them. We have two separate websites, but we wanted to create an area there where you can find both of them. So asksteveworthy.com should be launching by probably Tuesday, Wednesday, or something of that for next week. So that is going to be your one-stop shop to find everything Steve Worthy, what we do with both brands, speaking, engagements, and ability to look at both of our YouTube channels and both of our podcasts as well. For the summit, man, listen to me. Come loaded with your questions, right? I can talk all day long if you guys couldn't tell about whatever, but I love questions. I love engaging. I love hearing about your ideas about whatever it is that you're thinking about from a concept standpoint and giving you some quick thoughts. But we're going to talk about, we're going to try, talk about monetization. We're going to talk about how to start, potentially how to start a live stream. What does that do? What does that mean, right? How do you show up, right? Because I think that's the other part that a lot of people, they miss. Like, hit the go live button is cool, but how do you show up, right? Because you are your brand. And so it's important that you understand how you show up. So we'll talk about that because that goes into monetization, sponsorship, creating, some income from your live stream. How do you show up first? Let's get that on paper, put that on wax, as we say back in the day. And then we'll figure the rest of that stuff out. But let's figure out how you're going to show up. So we'll talk about that and a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
Y'all get ready. It's going down. May 12th, the gathering spot, Atlanta, Georgia. Seats are very limited. So if you do not get your tickets as soon as possible, you're probably not going to get in. I'm just going to say that on the front end. But yes, once again, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, man.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate everybody for listening and
Thank you for listening to Marketing for the Culture podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe, whether it's on Apple, Google, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And of course, our videos are on YouTube. If you have a moment, feel free to give us a rate, review, or just comment. We appreciate our sponsors for their continuous support. Also, if you're interested in learning more about our sponsors or becoming a member of the African American Marketing Association, visit aa-ma.org.